I've been thinking about the future. Oh, we've got such an exciting future ahead of us, haven't we? If only I had a crystal ball and could see it completely perfectly. But, I've almost kind of got a crystal ball, really, because the government, the benevolent, kind and generous government, have sort of been, well, they've been working almost overtime with their mates at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, all those jolly nice people that we've seen on our TV and computer screens recently, and those at the WHO, no, not the Doctor Who, the World Health Organisation, those that want to sort of take our sovereignty and tell us what they're going to do. It's fantastic. We've got a wonderful future. And if you don't know anything about it, well, fortunately, I've written it all down and we can have a little run through some of the exciting and wonderful things that we've got planned. Well, they've got planned. So let's have a little look then, shall we? Now, we're all reeling, aren't we, after that dreadful time with that virus. Do you remember that virus? I mean, I know it was 3 years ago, but sometimes it's so easy to forget these things. The virus was buzzing about. We couldn't go outside. We were all locked up. Do you remember? It was awful, wasn't it? Thank goodness we'll never have anything like that. And how wonderful the government, the lovely benevolent government that I often refer to, came out with this magic solution that we were going to be able to have, an injection that we could put into our bodies and it would save us. They were so insistent that we had this and that we didn't have to bother with any other treatment that's already on the shelf. We had to just wait for them to develop it, and then pretty much everybody, I mean, there can't be very many people who didn't have that wonderful medical intervention. Maybe me, I didn't have it. I was a bit stupid there. Oh, golly, I wish I had. And then all the boosters and all of that, and all that mandating that you'd almost lose your job if you didn't have it, and those passports they came out. They thought of everything to make sure that they saved us. And didn't they do a grand job? It was a bit of a shame that, of course, a few people, very inconvenient people, were having issues with this wonderful, magical intervention that they shoved into our bodies. Those people who are having heart attacks, how thoughtless of them. Or those people who had strokes and just would sort of collapse on the floor. Or those with blood clots. I mean, it was very irritating. I mean, we started to see, well, there was one chap, I mean, he made a right nuisance of himself. Do you remember that? What was his name? He was an MP and he stood up. His name was Andrew somebody or other. Can't remember. Made a complete nuisance of himself. Stood up. Luckily, everybody else didn't listen to him in the House of Commons. They didn't want to debate any of the harms that came with this incredibly beneficial and marvellous medical intervention. So they've just been ignoring him, and that's probably the right thing to do, isn't it? I would imagine that's what they would say anyway. Although he did have a point, a lot of people did seem to get harmed by it. But anyway, let's not worry about that too much. Let's think about the future, because it's such a bright and wonderful future. And there's so many things they've got lined up. So number one on here is those digital IDs. Now, do you know what a digital ID is? That's like a unique number that's given to you on a digital, ones and zeros. You know how it all works. And it means that the government will find out every single damn thing about you and they'll keep it on their computer. So if you've been brushing your teeth and you've got the wrong toothbrush, or you've got an eye test and it's gone a bit funny, or you've got a little bit of lumbago, and all your health records, your dental records, your hair brushing records, everything really about you, even if you've been online looking at naughty stuff that you shouldn't do, they'll know about it, which is very handy, because when you've got a complaint with, I don't know, the Inland Revenue, or perhaps you've got some problem with the council tax or any of those things, a parking ticket, you'll be able to log on ever so easily and identify yourself just by this magical digital number, and it will make it so easy. And anybody in the government, anybody at all, and even the government's friends and third-party people that they have that, will be able to find out exactly who you are and everything about you. They'll be able to look at that incredibly long list of information they've gathered about you and know exactly what it is they need to talk to you about, whilst also having a look at your other bits and pieces, just, for curiosity's sake. So that's a very useful thing, isn't it, that digital ID? And no doubt that will also mean that you'll need it to sort of, I don't know, log on to the internet at some point, that if you don't give them and don't participate in it, you won't be able to log on to the internet. So it'll be very handy for ISPs and, I don't know, other people to find out all your information and everything about you, which, to be honest, they pretty much do anyway these days. The other thing to look forward to, and it's going to be very exciting, I can't wait for this, is these 15-minute cities where everything will be around and available to you within 15 minutes. And the great thing is they're going to make sure you don't have any cars in the way, so you can walk and cycle and you can go down to your hospital because it'll be within 15 minutes, and your fire station, that'll be within 15 minutes, and all the schools, they'll be within 15 minutes, and everything, the council offices, they'll be within 15 minutes. Everything you could possibly want will be within 15 minutes. And the shops, of course, they'll be there within 15 minutes, and there'll be nothing on the roads. And they're already doing some of these tests. I don't know whether you've seen the trials in Oxford where they put in these enormous great planters, great big planters in the way to prevent the cars from getting down the road. How marvellous that is. No one wants those horrible stinky cars going down there. It's far better, particularly if you've got a bit of a gammy leg and you've got a Zimmer frame or something like that. You can walk and cycle, and it will be so much easier carrying those heavy bags all by yourself and unable to sort of get in a taxi or on a bus or on a van or anything, because there won't be any cars. You see, it'll be so nice, and the air will be ever so clean. So that's really handy to be in those 15-minute cities and unable to go anywhere else. Marvellous. I can't wait. It'll be just lovely. And of course, one of the other things that are going to be exciting, and how useful that will be when you're stuck in that 15-minute city, is those central bank digital currencies. Now, don't tell me you've not heard of the central bank digital currency. Oh my! Think of the advantage of not having to carry all that heavy cash and all those fiat currency. Now, I'm not talking about the cars, I'm talking about the notes, those notes, £10 notes, those £5 notes, those £50 notes. It's so difficult to hold on to in a wind when they just blow around all over the place. No, you won't have to worry about that. You can have your digital currency on the phone. Yes. So instead of having transactions done in private, where if you want to buy something from somebody and it's in cash and nobody need know, and you just, there they are, there's the money, mum's the word, like we used to do. How boring is that? I want everybody to know. I want the government to know and the banks to know, because that's the advantage of digital currency, the special new central bank digital currency that comes with a sort of social credit. So if you've said something online on some social media thing where you maybe criticised the government, heaven forbid you do that, but if you were stupid enough, or you said something about some personality on the television, something like that, or you made a statement that was a bit anti-woke and anything like that, you said something about, I don't know, transgenderism or any kind of religiosism or any of those sort of things, well, of course, that would be linked to your central bank digital currency. And then that would mean that there you are going to buy something. Perhaps you want to buy some petrol so that you can escape the 15-minute city. The central bank people will be able to watch you actually do it in real time and say, let's stop him from doing that because he's been a naughty boy. Or a naughty girl, of course. So that's one of the advantages of the central bank digital currency. How lovely is that? I'm very much looking forward to it. Because all this, of course, is there to do with this global warming thing. You've obviously heard of global warming. Now, if you haven't heard of global warming, come on, they've been telling about that for about 30 or 40 years. Where have you been? Oh, yes, I know they've been saying that global warming's going to happen and we're all going to drown in a horrible, agonising swamp in 10 years, and then 10 years pass and then we actually haven't drowned in a horrible thing, or the planet hasn't sort of burnt up, or the Maldives haven't actually disappeared over water, and then they come up with another 10 years and say, don't panic, it's in the next 10 years, don't worry, it will happen, we're all very excited, we can't wait for it to happen, the planet will burn up and we'll all be sizzling and all our skin will fall off and all of that sort of stuff. And then we get so disappointed, don't we, when the ice caps don't actually melt, or the polar bears don't actually starve to death. And in fact, I understand there are more polar bears than ever before at the moment, because this damn global warming doesn't seem to be actually coming along. My goodness, I wish it would hurry up, because then we could get much more into this net zero thing. The net zero, which is about trying to get rid of all that carbon dioxide, all that awful carbon dioxide. I hate it so much, I breathe it out every time I speak. I'm breathing out some now. Get rid of it. Horrible stuff. I know it has an advantage for plants and trees and things like that, and that helps the food grow. But my goodness, that's why we expel it, don't we? When we breathe out horrible, horrible, nasty carbon dioxide, the gas of life. Who needs it? In fact, I would like to see it completely eradicated, get rid of life altogether. That would be so much better, wouldn't it? Yeah, so net zero is obviously something that we desperately, desperately need to get to. And if we manage to get to all of that, of course, one of the things that contributes to it are these wretched animals that we farm. Oh, aren't they awful? Farting about, causing methane. That's another of these global gases that are terrible for the greenhouse effect in the planet. So we need to get shot of those, definitely. We'll get rid of all of that. We don't want any of that farming. We just have plant food and, of course, the new diet. Oh, I can't wait. Insects and bugs. How delicious will that be? Being mashed up, so you don't have to look at their little bug eyes as you put them into your mouth, and then put into the food chain in all sorts of processed foods. Of course, they will label it, in big letters saying you are about to eat insects, or these bug-eyed bars are delicious. Lovely chocolate bug-eyed bar, be lovely. It may actually be in some Latin or something, which is a little harder to detect, but it will be labelled, so you will know when you're eating a little bit of, antenna of an ant or a mealworm. It'll soon fill you up, and, all that protein's good for you, isn't it? Something else that they're doing with the animals, of course, is this new genetic treatment. There's just been an act passed. I don't know whether you're aware of that. Precision breeding. Yes, they can take the genome, whatever that is, out of one animal and manipulate it a little bit and then shove it back, and the animal will be, well, somewhat different. I'm not quite sure whether it'll have 2 heads, 3 tails, 15 arms, all of that, 101 different sort of teats, it may do, and give us more milk and various things. It sounds, I know it sounds a bit Frankenstein-like, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely healthy, and it will save us having to farm in a more natural and wholesome and holistic way. Nobody wants that old-fashioned stuff, do they? Give us the new technologies, far, far more interesting. So we've got that, and then when you go to the supermarket to buy all of this stuff, well, already they've installed these biometric cameras, at the self-service tills as you go in there, and the camera is looking at your face rather than your hands, making sure you don't nick anything, because they don't care whether you nick anything anymore, because they've got your facial recognition technology. They know exactly who you are the minute you walk in, and of course they've stored that, and no doubt that's linked with the central bank digital currency, so they can keep a track on you and surveil you or wherever you go. Must be fantastic, have those cameras monitoring you. Well, you can imagine everybody loves putting their pictures on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places, and now we'll be able to put those pictures on some internal dark sort of database when we go to the supermarkets or walk down the street or wherever we go. Even our phones are doing it when we're not even looking at it, or our laptops, the new technology, facial recognition. It's a marvellous technology. I can't wait for my face to be proudly there presented to them. The other thing that's exciting coming up, talking about mobile phones and things, are these wonderful alerts. I don't know why they didn't think of them before. These are the emergency alerts. Now, there's a wonderful day, what's it called? St. George's Day, 23rd of April. It's coming up very soon, and around about early evening our phones are going to start making a very chilling noise, a sort of very bright, dazzling, and all of that, and it's going to be telling us this is the government. We are doing a test, making sure you're aware that we're here. We are on your side. Oh, it's ever so nice. It's kind of a bit like 1984. What a lovely book that was. So they're going to be testing a new system of magic alerts that are going to... You might be a bit worried when you first get them, but you'll soon get used to them. I'm sure they'll be telling us what to do every 2 weeks. And an alert will go and tell you to do this and tell you to do that. It's marvellous, isn't it, that they can tell us what to do at any time, whenever they like. I think that's going to be fantastic. We know that, of course, one of the things that we're preparing for, because warehouses all over the world now are storing up with big huge crates of this medicine. I think it's called Palmavir, but it's not palm olive or any of that, or palm oil or any of those things. Palmavir, I think. Big crates of it. Airline pilots have been shunting this about because they're preparing for a new pandemic. Yes, and this is the medicine that will cure it, because they know that somehow, I don't know, they must have got the crystal ball, of course. They know that very soon there's going to be bird flu pandemic and we'll all get locked down in our houses. And these alerts will be very handy for us to be locked down, and then they'll be able to tell us to go back to the hospital and have another little medical intervention, which I'm a bit worried about the side effects, in fact, where your skin goes blotchy and you get disorientated and you start raving and ranting, a bit like me now, really. Not that I've had the bird flu yet, but I'm very much looking forward to having it. It must be wonderful, wonderful. Although, obviously, for birds and for humans, it's not so good. Another thing, I know the list is ever so long and I will try and get to the end of it. The other thing is, of course, all the banks are going to collapse, because we've seen the runs on the banks and we've heard how a number of big banks have collapsed, and it seems that all our money is going to be disappearing. But don't worry, we've got those central bank digital currencies to look forward to. We're all going to be driving electric cars, which will be very nice, and we'll have electricity in the house. Well, we've got electricity in the house already, but all the old gas stuff will be, we don't want any of that polluting gas and all of that nonsense. Everything will be on electricity, and there's plenty of wind. In fact, it's raining and it's dull today, so the solar panels aren't working terribly well, but there is a bit of wind, so at least the windmills are going round, which is very handy, and they're all very, environmental, apart from when they sort of run out of energy and you have to bury all that concrete and all that metal and start again, and all of that. And the batteries, of course, for the electric cars, all very environmental, apart from those poor kids in sort of third worlds or whatever worlds it is, where they're down in the mines trying to get the cobalt out and all those precious metals. But we don't care about them, do we? Of course we don't, as long as we've got those wonderful electric cars that we can go shooting about. Although, of course, they want us in 15-minute cities and they don't want the cars in there. So I'm not quite sure how that works with these electric cars. Perhaps we'll have the electric cars. We'll spend all the money that we don't have on the electric cars, and then maybe they'll take them away. I haven't quite worked out how that works, but very exciting, very exciting. We don't have to worry too much about that. After all, we've got a generation of kids going to school now in which they're using fingerprint technology to pay for their dinners. And of course, we've got almost some sort of surveillance system on the children being kept with those, what is it called, class something or other. I did an interview with a lady and she was having a moan about how awful it was that the kids were being tracked and traced and everything about them. Bit like how the government have got the digital IDs, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because that's our future. We're all very excited about our future. It's all going to be good, isn't it? Under the control of the government. We will be more like children than ever before, and the government and the authorities will be more like parents. We won't have to think for ourselves. We can just sit in front of these great big screens and experience life from a chair with perhaps the artificial intelligence doing everything for us. It's going to be marvellous. So there you are. That's what's going on in the world. And if you want to find out a bit more about that, a mate of mine has started a podcast. I'll leave the link in the description, called What's Going On, in which we just have a moan about some of these things. Although I'm really excited because I can't wait for my world, my wonderful world, to be shrunken right down so that I barely ever leave my home and I'm told what to do by the authority. Somehow I feel that's really a really exciting future. Anyway, just thought I'd tell you a little bit about it. Really?